Welcome to M2Techcast, a live internet radio show offering the latest news and interviews with the people driving business, technology, and politics in Michigan. Now, your hosts, Matt Roush and Mike Brennan.
Good afternoon, it's Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And you're watching the M2Techcast right here at mitechnews.tv and also at PodcastDetroit.com and wherever fine podcasts are distributed. We have a guest to start today's show who is a regular on the program, Dr. Sabrina Collins, who is Executive Director of the Marburger STEM Center at my employer, Lawrence Technological University. That is the university's clearinghouse for all of its K-12 outreach efforts. And Sabrina, I want to start out by asking you about Lawrence Tech's high school summer camps this year. How are those being handled? I know they had to be virtual last year. It looks like they're going to have to be virtual one more year this year, right?
Well, we are planning as if we are going to be in person. And so we will be following all the protocols. You know, the summer camps play a very important role at Lawrence Tech, a very high yielding program. Nearly 50% of students that participate in our summer camps enroll at LTU, and they begin the week of June 21st through July 26th, so 4 weeks.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about what some of the different topic areas are that are offered.
So thank you. So we offer nearly 30 different summer camps across all 4 of LTU's colleges, including starting your own business, entrepreneurial mindset, to automotive engineering, which is one of our very popular summer camps, biomedical engineering, molecules and medicine, you name it. We actually do it at Lawrence Tech. And Lawrence Tech certainly is the university of the future, leading the way with innovation and creativity and project-based learning. And our summer camps are the exact same way. And so our students, the students that participate, really get a chance to explore, these wonderful technologies.
Let me ask you, when you announced this last week, I don't know if it's still going forward, but you're having a competition, both a video and an essay competition that was tied in with National Engineering Week. Is that still going on, or is that past now?
That's still going on. And actually, so it's a collaboration between the College of Engineering and the Marburger STEM Center, where targeting both middle school and high school students. So they could either write an essay, or they can create a team video focused on some engineering topic, why engineering, why they want to explore engineering and be really creative. So we are excited to be getting these entries from these young people, because we all know that young people are incredibly creative.
All right, so tell me a little bit about what some of the options are for these summer camps. Even, hopefully if they occur in person, there are day camps and overnight camps available, right?
Absolutely. So students have the opportunity to participate in a residential experience where they would be able to live in the dorms and have that real college experience, or a commuter experience. So we have both options depending on what is best for the students and their families.
So how are you going to, I guess you're making some assumptions here. We, as you know, we have an epidemiologist on the show every week. So Matt and I don't claim to be experts in this area, but we do interview an expert. And he was saying that it would probably be late July or August before everybody that wants to get a vaccine can. So does that play into your thinking at all?
That does play into our thinking, so we're going to definitely follow all protocols coming from the state. So absolutely, we're going to make the right decisions, and keep students safe and go from there.
I know it's been pretty remarkable at Lawrence Tech so far this academic year. We did shut down a week earlier than planned in the fall semester. We were going to shut down right before Thanksgiving. We shut down a week earlier than that because we had a bit of an outbreak on campus. But this semester we have gone back. We have, students living in the dorms. We have in-person classes, and the the knock on wood here, the COVID rate has been pretty low. So we've, I think, done a pretty good job of following the various protocols of keeping people safe.
Yeah, when our students are awesome, students, faculty, and staff, they pivoted, and so yeah, so we do have a low rate on campus with COVID.
Okay,
Well,
I'm looking at the website, the LTU website right now. There are 2 active residential cases, that is 0.09% of the student body, and 4 active overall cases, 0.19% of the student body. So that's pretty low.
Well, certainly science students would appreciate the science of what's going on right now versus a lot of folks out there, which still amazes me, that think this COVID thing's all hoax. I don't understand that one at all. But your folks are very well educated and they would appreciate what's really going on, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And and one thing is very, very clear. This pandemic that we are all impacted by, I think is showing in real time why STEM matters, and the public can see, this race to find therapeutics to treat these diseases, what goes into that, developing a vaccine, clinical trials, and then bringing it to the public. That's one of the, that's it to me. This is really showing, the importance of that and that process. And I read an editorial not too long ago that talked about how we had the Sputnik moment, right, where the public was really getting behind STEM education. I don't know, if this coronavirus, the coronavirus may also, highlight the importance of STEM education as well.
All right, back to the topic of the summer camps. There is financial aid available, right? If people, of perhaps limited means might want to give their kids this opportunity.
Absolutely. We offer summer camps. We offer scholarships for, for students that are interested, yes, with parents that have modest means, absolutely, because we want these opportunities for everybody, all students to have an opportunity to explore STEM on our campus.
So now that science is much more highlighted, are you getting a lot more folks applying to attend Lawrence Tech? Are you seeing an uptick that coincides with the interest in science?
That's a good question. And I believe that we are seeing an uptick. I haven't seen the actual numbers in terms of, applications from interested students, but we certainly, there's a strong interest in STEM from students that do apply.
Yeah. And
I mean, our biomedical engineering, go ahead, Matt.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, our biomedical engineering program is a department that is very popular, with, and I want to say they have reached, you have about 50% men and women, right, enrolled in that program, very, very popular program, our nursing program. So students are definitely interested in those fields.
And in sort of
Matt.
related technical fields, I can tell you that I've seen the enrollment numbers here for spring semester, and our College of Architecture and Design has really seen a nice uptick in students enrolled as well. And I think part of the reason for that is that a lot of those programs have been online for a long time, and I think students are accustomed to learning that way. So there's less apprehension about perhaps going to a hybrid model, or if there's another outbreak, an all online model in the College of Architecture and Design. But they've seen a really nice uptick in enrollment this semester, and it's heavy in both architecture and design, because there's some design programs at Lawrence Tech that are more industrial. There's a industrial design program and a transportation design program. So this isn't just about, building houses, although that's important. It is also about, stuff that ties in with engineering when you're designing a product.
Right. And they, one of the things that they often think about is the community, right? When you are designing a building or a space, getting that input from the community, people who will actually occupy and use those spaces.
Well, I didn't want to let this time go by without congratulating you also on an award that you've won recently here from Lawrence Tech.
Thank you.
The John Petty Community Champion Award. That is, I believe you're the third annual recipient of that award. It was named after a very distinguished LTU alumnus, Mr. Mr. Petty, who sadly passed away last year, but he was an early African-American engineering student at Lawrence Tech who went on to a very distinguished career in the aerospace industry, actually building jet engines for national defense. And basically the award is presented as someone who's done a lot to bring science and technology to more or less the minority community, but the community at large. So I just wanted to congratulate you on being named the recipient of that award.
Thank you very much. I was tremendously surprised and humbled and thankful, to be receiving it. But I couldn't do anything without the team, from the Marburger STEM Center and the wonderful faculty and staff, and of course the support of you as well, Matt. Doing this work. So thank you.
Well, and it's certainly named after someone pretty spectacular. In my prior life at the Engineering Society of Detroit, I sat through quite a few editorial board meetings for their magazine, Technology Century, with John Petty, who was on that award. And he had a wide-ranging intellect and was a really remarkable person. So once again, congratulations.
Yeah, he was thank you. Yeah, he was a tremendous leader who believed in serving your community and serving others. And that's what I continue to try to do.
And also, I understand you are writing a book. Tell us a little bit about this book that you're working on.
Sure. So it's my first time serving as editor of a book. It's entitled African American Chemists, Academia, Industry, and Social Entrepreneurship. So it's kind of a history book. But it's a little more than that, because there are lesson plans at the end of each chapter for faculty to actually use in their classrooms, aligned with course content. And the cover of the book was designed by a senior student enrolled in the College of Architecture and Design, Matt Campbell. He said he was inspired by Spider-Man and Black Panther, when he put it together, and he just did a fabulous job. So I'm just really pleased, and it'll be published online early June of 2021.
Okay. Well, you've done a lot of work in sort of using popular culture to emphasize STEM topics, right? Talk about that a little bit. The use of the Black Panther and vibranium to make students think more about chemistry.
Yeah, I was not a fan of Marvel Comics prior to the movie Black Panther coming out in June of 2018. In February of 2018, but I have, my chemistry brain is always on, and I saw a teachable moment regarding that fictional element. And we ended up publishing a paper, and I published a book chapter dedicated to the memory of Chadwick Boseman. And I'm looking forward to the next installment coming out in 2022, where Shuri is supposed to take over as the next Black Panther. So my hope is that I will go to the movies and be inspired again.
Well, I'm hoping vibranium is real, because Captain America uses it in the shield, and I'd be very disappointed if it turned out it wasn't real, So
Yeah,
just kidding.
Exactly.
Well, we've only got about a minute left, so why don't you tell folks that might be interested in the summer camp how they can apply to get involved?
Sure. So you can go to the LTU website, www.ltu.edu. Go to type in Marburger STEM Center or high school summer camps, and the link will pop up and you can register. So come join us and have some fun this summer.
All right. Thanks very much, Sabrina Collins, Executive Director of the Marburger STEM Center at Lawrence Technological University. We'll be right back in just a minute with another segment of the M2Techcast. For right now, it's Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And you're watching the M2Techcast, mitechnews.tv.
What do you get at Lawrence Technological
Thank you so much,
University?
Dr. Collins.
Everything.
Appreciate it.
Great labs and studios, supportive professors, plus a full campus life, NAIA athletics, and all the software you need to succeed. Be smart. Be more.
Bye,
At
Dave.
LTU, possible is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the highest of any university in America. Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches. Why wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
Lawrence Technological University graduates earn a degree and a higher starting salary. In fact, when it comes to earning potential, the Brookings Institution ranks LTU 5th among U.S. colleges and universities. Be enriched. Be more. At LTU, possible is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the highest of any university in America. Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches. Why wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
Hey, it's Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And you're watching the M2Techcast, MITechnews.tv.
And speaking of regular contributors, we have Dave Weaver joining us again. And Dave is with Cityside Ventures and Birmingham Angels. Started Great Lakes Angels, gosh, when I was just a young man, I think. It's been a long time, right, Dave?
I think we all were.
2002. Yeah, you were in diapers.
I was in diapers, so I'm, just turned 39 last week myself.
Oh, well, then if you were in diapers, I must have been a zygote or something. I'm not sure.
So anyway, you got a new wrinkle going. You have, starting tomorrow, I believe, you have a virtual Shark Tank-like event that you're going to be offering and to entrepreneurs out there that are looking to get plugged into private investors, angel investors. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you guys are up to tomorrow?
Okay. We've been running for Birmingham Angels more or less monthly showcases, picking 3 or 4 companies that we've done some due diligence on that would we think are funding ready, and then the company's pitched, and then there's follow-up meetings to decide if they want to go in the deal or not, and then we act pretty quickly. Most of the deals we've done so far have been closed within 60 days of the time they pitched, which is amazing track record. So for tomorrow, we decided to add in front of the showcase a bunch of companies, mostly Michigan-based. So in the first session, we have some companies from Israel, a company from Poland that's got a location in Toronto that's pitching as well because of the time zone changes, to get them on the deck early before they're in bed with the rest of the day for us. And so we've got a full day. We've got 20 some companies pitching. And like I say, they're all over the country, all over the technology sectors. We've already started, because it's full, we've already had people applying for the next event on March 23rd. There's a link at our website under Cityside Ventures to look for the deal tank. And there you can scroll down, you can find information on the March and April events and get on that. So it's 2 things. If you're an investor and you want to see a lot of good cherry pick deals, this is a way to cherry pick during the day, on and off. You don't have to be there for the whole day. You pick the time and the deal you want to see, get on, get off. But the main ones will be at the end of the day that have more due diligence done on them. But it's an open flow. We've got companies in California, investors in California, and we're going to have a lot of fun. This is our first one. We plan on doing more of them. I think we need more companies with a lot of eyeballs seeing what's going on. And also, if you're an entrepreneur, you get a chance to see how other people pitch, learn a lot from what they've done, what they should have said, and what comes up in the Q&A with the investors. Go, how do you think about that for my pitch? It's very helpful.
So how did you assemble this list of companies? Where did you recruit them from?
Well, that's not the hard part. Once people find out that you're writing checks and you're writing them quickly and frequently, the deals come. But we also reached out to our colleagues across the state and some folks outside the state that have a lot of deals. We've recently partnered with one of the companies who's going to be interviewed tomorrow on the West Coast that does over 1,000 deals a year, just about. Wow. And they're going to send us deals that they seed early on with maybe less than 50K. So they're in real early, but they need more behind that. So they might have deals they can send to us. And they're good deals. So yeah, we've got folks from outside the state sending us deals. Like I mentioned, Techstars in Toronto's got some, but across the state, all the intergroups and the smart zones and stuff like that are going to be glad to know we've got more exposure for them. We don't care where they are in the state of Michigan. We'd love to get them on our platform and have more eyeballs seeing what's going on.
Is there a certain criteria you're looking for? Do these need to be revenue generating, pre-seed, idea on the back of a napkin? Exactly what?
Yeah, well, we'd like to have them have at least one full-time in the company, person in the company, okay? And that they're working on the proof of concept. If they've got early revenue, all the better. Or if they need this funding to get them a revenue, that's all right if the business model makes sense and the team behind it makes sense. So most of the deals we've done so far are pre-revenue. Tomorrow during the day, we're going to be interviewing some of our portfolio companies that are doing well, and you can hear about what they're doing. Another chance to see what they do after they get their money and how they keep moving forward in spite of the COVID constraints that they've had to deal with in 2020.
Matt?
All right. So, where do you expect to find are the people who are going to be investing in this? Is it angel investors? Is it small institutional investors? What kind of group do you think will be writing the checks?
Most of the investors logged on right now are individual angel investors. We do have some folks logged on that represent some age groups here in Michigan. We also have some family offices that we reached out to that are looking to do seed deals as well, early stage deals coming on board. We've been reaching out to family offices ourselves for follow-on funding behind our deals, because if we can't take the whole round, we want to make sure it gets done as soon as possible. So some of those folks have got more capital to deploy, can help fill around pretty quickly if they like it, especially we've done the due diligence for them and they like what we've done.
Now, I know angel investors typically are in the 150,000, maybe if it's a really good deal, 250. So what sort of ballpark do you think these potentially, some of these, obviously not all of them are going to make the cut, but those that do, what do you think that the funding levels are going to probably be?
Well, I'll answer that. First, I'll mention that the way it's set up tomorrow is that at the end of each session, there's like four in a group, and there's no more sessions during the day. We're going to ask for everybody that's an investor to indicate which companies they have interest in. And then I'll set up follow-up meetings with the companies and those investors. We'll do that each time during the day so we can keep this thing going. If there's interest, you want to stay on top of the interest level, especially if you're raising money. You don't want to take too long getting back to people and say, yes, I'm interested, because I'll move on. And then the size of the checks is going to depend on who it is. I know our investors write checks anywhere from 15 to 25 to 100K. All depends on how strong you feel about the deal and how much discretionary money they have to play with at that particular time. We like to do SPVs, special purpose vehicles, so people can come in into one investment document that becomes a single name on the cap table for companies. They like that rather than have 20 individual names. If they can have 10 people in one investment vehicle, it's a lot easier to negotiate moving forward, especially when VCs come in. They don't want to see 50 individual investors on the deal. They have to close and do terms with all those people. It's a nightmare. So we do SPVs. We've got one we're just closing now from January that we had invested in. Here it is, the end of February. So we're moving quickly.
All right. How has COVID affected what you do? I know you've been putting together these things for years and years now. Is it just been simply a matter of moving to meetings like this, or I know you used to? I mean, going way back, you used to have like dinners at the Birmingham Country Club for people.
Birmingham Country Club, the Athletic Club, number of places, and I'm actually in our office space above Walgreens downtown Birmingham right now, where Jeff Sloan has started Nation there. We sublease some space there. That's where we used to have our angel meetings with Birmingham Angels. Once COVID came into place, the pandemic, we had to go virtual. And actually, in some ways, it's actually improved the attendance. Because a lot of times you'll have a meeting at the end of the day and you have people leaving their job to go to the meeting, might get caught in traffic or have a last minute thing pop up. But now that they can log on from home or at work, we've had more people show up at these things because they don't have the nightmare of traffic and commuting and getting home late, explaining why they were late. They're at some meeting that their wife doesn't understand what the hell's going on, or their spouse or whoever. So yeah, more people actually attend these things now because it's more convenient. And we do video record all these events so that people that miss it, if you're a member of Birmingham Angels, you can go back and see the information on our deal platform called Side Pitch.
You anticipated my next question because I can't speak for anybody other than myself. I couldn't spend the whole day online watching deals and keep up with everything else that I'm supposed to be doing. So people can go in post event and be able to. And how long are these pitches? They're going to be 5-10 minutes, something like that.
The ones until the very end of the day are 10 minutes pitch and 5 minutes Q&A.
Okay.
And as I might have mentioned earlier, if I didn't, if somebody logs on, they still can log on, today or first thing in the morning for tomorrow. You can pick and choose which events you want to observe as you're an investor or a startup company, and get on and off as you so choose. No, the only one's gonna be there all day is like Duran and myself.
Yeah.
So
You
what are
have the
the
time.
what are the industries that are going to be represented at this thing?
There's some, oh boy, he got me unprepared to think about how to answer that one. I know we've got a number of SaaS models. We've got, we do have some life science companies. I think there's one or two automotive space related companies. The list is on our website. Everybody can take a look. I'm sorry I didn't bring up the list in front of me.
Which brings up a good point. Why don't you give that address right now? Because people can still sign up to watch this tomorrow, I assume, right?
Yes. Is there a place I put in the chat box, or just read it?
No, just go ahead and tell us, and then we'll include that when I edit the video.
If you go citysideventures.com/the-deal or hyphen rather, deal-tank-feb. So the deal tank with hyphens in it, feb at the end. Or just go there, Cityside Ventures, and then look for the deal tank, and you can drop down and find it there.
And I'm sure Mike will put that website address up, a link to it on his website, right, Mike?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So hopefully the deals themselves won't tank, but you modeled this after Shark Tank in a way, I assume. Yes?
Yeah, well, that's why I use the name Tank.
Yes.
Shark Tank is the deal tank. That one's been taken, but we're not going to be as hard on these folks. And right now, they're not going to walk away with checks. But later on, we'd like to get this thing going where we have some sponsors to have some kind of reward, financial reward for the folks. But if they get funding, that's just as good than winning a contest.
Yeah, right at the meeting. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So we're excited. No one else is doing it to stay with this variety and many deals in one day. And all the contestants are very excited about it. I've got some investors looking at this as well.
There may be bigger or at least angel investors groups with more members, but certainly you are one of the more visible ones. I've tried to work with some of the other angel groups like I work with you, and it's like you run into a brick wall. They don't want anything to do with anything publicity wise, right? Which I think is a mistake on their part, because it seems to work pretty well for you guys.
Well, we'd like to be transparent. In 2020, I think we only had like 9 meetings, but we funded like 14 deals.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody else in the state did 14 deals, and I don't care how many meetings they had, and we want to do more this year. We'd like to triple that. So we want to get more money out in the eco space, keep these companies here in Michigan, grow them, grow wealth for the founders and for the investors.
Okay, well, we're in our last minute, so why don't you give the address one more time about where people can sign up to observe all these various pitches tomorrow?
Sure, Michael. It's citysideventures.com/the-deal-tank-feb.
Okay.
All right. Thanks very much, David Weaver, longtime angel investor in the state of Michigan, and a guy who's responsible for putting a whole bunch of money to work to build Michigan's prosperity. Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for making this aware to everybody. We appreciate it very much.
Okay. We'll be back in just a minute with another segment of the M2Techcast. For right now, it's Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And you're watching the M2Techcast, mitechnews.tv.
Thanks, Dave.
What do you get at Lawrence
Dave.
Technological University? Everything. Great labs and studios, supportive professors, plus a full campus life, NAIA
there?
athletics, and all the software you need to succeed. Be smart. Be more.
No, not
At
yet.
LTU, possible is everything.
It's killing me all the time.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the highest of any university in America.
Calling Dr. Doom. Calling Dr.
Counselors,
Doom.
faculty, and coaches. Why wait?
Be
Find out
prepared to
more
do a quick LTU thing in Fred's late. So
Lawrence Technological University graduates earn a degree.
Well, if you listen to the Wonder Vision rumors, Dr. Doom might be getting ready to show up.
The Brookings Institution ranks LTU 5th among U.S. colleges and universities. Be enriched. Be more. At LTU, possible is everything.
Salaries of Lawrence Tech grads are among the highest of any university in America. Plan a campus visit to meet with counselors, faculty, and coaches.
all right, we'll see if that
Why
gets
wait? Find out more at ltu.edu.
All right, Matt, we're waiting for our guest, Fred Brown. So
Yes,
we
we
just
are.
had Sabrina Collins on. Any other hot news coming out of LTU?
Well, as far as I know, believe it or not, we are starting football season Saturday.
Really?
Yeah. The NAIA talked about moving football to the spring, to spring semester. And as far as I know, they're still planning on actually doing that. I'm going to pull up the LTU athletics website right now and tell you what's going on. I do know we have men's and women's basketball going on, still with no spectators, unfortunately, but these games are available online, and you can watch them at ltuathletics.com. And the women's basketball team is, as usual, having a pretty good season right now.
Okay.
Some of our athletics was not held. The men's basketball, or the men's volleyball team, rather, it was a team decision that they would not play a season this year. They just didn't think it was worth it. But we're playing ice hockey, we're playing basketball. And let me see about the football schedule here real quick.
Well, I know our next guest has talked about he has college eligibility left and he wanted to play quarterback for LTU. Is that right, Fred Brown?
That's right. Yes, I practice regularly with my dog, and I decided that my passing game is pretty good, and got to work on my run game a little bit.
And
but
she's
other
a
than that, I'm
hell of a
ready to go.
receiver too, right? So
Yes, a golden receiver. Okay.
yes.
Yes, indeed. How are you guys doing?
Good,
I'm
good.
okay.
Excellent. Excellent.
We were going to talk about tiny bubbles this week.
That's right. I wanted to kind of set that up a little bit, and I have a little piece of presentation that I thought might be helpful to set that up as why we want to go toward bubble management in this period. And so, gosh, I have some stuff. Why don't I try to share my screen here?
Okay.
And we can see where we are and see what makes sense. We'll get through as much of it as we can. So let's see here. Now, I haven't shown a lot of these slides to anybody, so I'll need to have your help in making sure they're comprehensible.
We'll do our best.
Okay, so the first one.
Okay.
I've suppressed the fourth and fifth dimensions of the slide and only have three. So hopefully this is going to be something that's understandable. One of the things that's happening right now is that people are starting to understand that efficacy and effectiveness are not quite the same thing. What we did in our clinical trials is we select clinical endpoints. And so we're looking at vaccines, and we're trying to decide how fast we're going to reach herd immunity, how effective these will actually be in the real world. And so we are mixing real world analysis with clinical trial results and trying to understand what the overall impact of this vaccine is going to be. And when we did our clinical trials, we have a full circle around disease pathology. We know for sure, because of our clinical endpoints that we selected, that, well, we're at least pretty sure that Moderna and Pfizer, for almost everybody who takes it, you will have almost no serious disease, and we're talking about 90+% effectiveness. And in the case of Moderna, 100% effectiveness. In the case of Pfizer, they had one questionable out of serious disease out of, that was let's see, 17,000 people tested. So 1 out of 17,000, not too bad. So we know that these drugs are very efficacious in our clinical trial work. And On the other hand, what we didn't test for, and and you remember the way we tested that, right? We kind of injected some people with the vaccine, some people with a fake vaccine, with just salt water, and then we let them go out and we let them see what the infectivity rate was. And we got results, and that showed, gosh, the infectivity rate, the disease, the actual people catching the disease, maybe people raise their hand, oh, I feel sick, they would get tested, sure enough, they had the disease. We know for sure that we reduced the disease that much. What we weren't sure about are two other factors that are really important for overall efficaciousness of the vaccine. The first one is, did we reduce the transmission? If we vaccinate everyone, will it stop spreading? Or will we just reduce the amount of disease we've got? Everyone will have colds and sniffles, but they won't get super sick and die. Now that's a good outcome, but it's not the same thing as having lots and lots of disease around, lots and lots of colds and sniffles. And every once in a while, if you have a large enough gene pool, we know that we can get variants that may not be colds and sniffles. It may actually be worse. It may kill us faster. Because right now we've already got 500,000 dead. That's a sad day today. We're going to hit 500,000, I think. So that's the one thing we aren't sure about. And the other thing we're not sure about is whether we can prevent reinfection. So after a small period of time, are you going to be susceptible again? And those are two really important factors. They're actually more important than actually reducing disease, if you think about it, whether we reduce spread and whether we reduce reinfection. Because if you're constantly getting reinfected, you're constantly sick. It really puts a drain on the economy, causes you to have significant, you want to wear your mask all the time, you're going to have to test it all the time. We're not going to be able to return to normalcy if we can't reduce transmission, can't reduce reinfection. It'll be better, we'll live probably through a disease, but we won't necessarily reduce its prevalence in our communities or the way we're having to deal with it, which is with lots of masking and interference and distancing and not being able to visit our families. So what will happen if we only have something that's good for efficacy and for the disease? And the answer in real world is, what happens is you start to dilute the virus. So remember how the Spanish flu killed off so many people? And eventually it got incorporated into the flu. It got slowly but surely was endemic. And today we can still find pieces of the Spanish flu around in the flu flu genetic code, but it's not killing us off. It just sort of got incorporated. And that's what happens here. If we get something that basically, if all we can do is reduce the disease, what happens is that slowly but surely we vaccinate everybody who's vulnerable, right? All of us older guys get vaccinated, and the disease moves from those communities to the young people who don't actually get that sick, right? And so slowly but surely you start to get to what we call an endemic disease. So it's around, but it's not as impactful as it initially was. And there, what we do for those kind of diseases is we create childhood universal vaccines, like we have for MMR and so on. And then we give people boosters if we have a big outbreak or have challenges with that, if it slowly wanes. Now, so that's where we are for sure right now. We are on that track, right? The problem is that takes 5 years. It's going to take us a few years to dilute this thing down. Those are a lot of assumptions there. It can take between 1 and 20 years to do that. But given what we think the infectivity rate and the death rates are, we think it's going to be about a 5-year process. So what happens if we have something that for sure reduces transmission? I don't know if you guys saw, but there was a researcher in Israel that tweeted the results of a clinical trial. And the problem was, it wasn't a clinical trial, it was a real world trial in one of the largest hospitals in Israel. And he claimed that they had reduced transmission spread by 89%. Now, that's remarkable. The problem is, unfortunately, the way you look at transmission spread is you test the different cohorts, vaccinated and unvaccinated. And in Israel, it turned out, sadly, that everyone who wasn't vaccinated had to get tested a lot more often. Every time you went into a building, every time you went on a trip, every time you felt a little bit sick, you'd get tested. Versus the guys who had the vaccine, they say, "Oh, please enter. Please enter. You can fly anywhere you want," and no, not enough testing. So what happened was, of course, you super tested the guys who didn't have the vaccine, didn't test the guys who did. So we could have missed a lot of that. We know, we're pretty sure from the clinical trials that we're going to get 50%. 90% probably overstates the case. So if we get 50%, we actually reduce the transmission, that's exciting. And we think that's going to be enough to actually cause herd immunity faster, much faster than if we only have something that reduces the disease pathology and causes an endemic virus. Here, we really have to monitor what the prevalence is. We really have to monitor community vaccination levels. We really have to understand community spread levels a lot better than we do today. We're not testing nearly enough to understand that very well. So the problem with this is we don't really know where we are. And we probably can't find out where we are until we do some pretty good trials. And right now, the best trials that are being conducted that have just been allowed in England are what they call challenge trials. They're actually going to inject people and not inject people, and then they're going to expose them to the virus, to various levels of the virus, and they're going to try to figure out exactly how much virus is required for each kind of phenotype, which these are going to be young 18-year-olds to 30-year-olds. They're going to be monitored constantly. And every time they get they'll try to give them a little bit of virus, a little bit more virus, a little more virus, a little more virus, and they're going to try to see whether the people who've been vaccinated need more or less virus to actually transmit the disease. Now that's a very sophisticated study. It's also, in my opinion, pretty unethical because sadly, I think there's going to be a lot of people who get this disease and then have long-term effects, even though they're young. So I'm happy that the epidemiologists were able to convince the authorities, but I wouldn't have advised them to allow that kind of a trial to occur, and I'm worried about the people who are participating. So if you get invited to that kind of trial, Mike, don't do it.
No problem. I still haven't even got my first vaccine yet. Hand out there, health department. Hey, so I've signed up for everything, and I can't even dig one out. So.
I last night I ordered a little bit of Lacy cookies. I like the Lacy cookies, and I ordered them up, and I can track my Lacy cookies from basically the point of manufacture all the way to my doorstep in real time. And I'm sitting here on that vaccine stuff that are life-saving vaccines, and I have no idea what's going on. And I have access to a lot of stuff that you can look at that and go, "You're kidding me? You're getting a 5-week cycle. You don't know what's going on with a vaccine from point A to point B for 5 days, 6 days. You have no idea where it is, what its control levels are." It's just incredible to me, the priorities we've created. But anyway, that's another story. I'm looking forward to getting. In about 3 hours, I'll get my Lacy cookies. Vaccines, I have no idea.
But you'd rather have the shot. Yes, right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd rather have the shot. I've had it.
So maybe they can figure out some way of putting the vaccine in the cookies.
There you go.
And then they have a nice edible thing going.
Yeah, it'll be like the polio,
right?
like the polio sugar cube. I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember that. I remember that. Yeah.
Well, it turns out that for mucosal diseases like this one, it's better to give yourself a snort of something or inhale something than it is actually to inject. We're slowly going to get those kind of vaccines available, mostly for lesser developed countries, I think, because they have a better way of transporting them.
Yeah, so, easier to store too, right?
Yeah, much easier to store, easier to inject. Now the challenge is between you and me is that inhalation kinds of modes of administration are very hard to control. How much is a sniff? How open are your lungs? How much of a squirt do you need? Luckily, we've got flu vaccines that are doing this already, FluMist and others from Abbott, and so we've got this down pretty well. But it takes a long time to sort of dial that in, so that's why it's going to take a little longer. Anyway, the last issue we've got is the reinfection prevention, right? And this is all you hear about in these variants. And I don't know if you've heard about all these variants. We talked a little bit about them in the rate of mutation, but we've got one coming in now. It's about we think it's pretty kind of at the 10% level out in California, maybe 14-15% level in California. And that's the B117 variant. We think and right now the Brits are indicating that real world analysis is showing that there's a 98% reduction in B117 variant transmission. And disease level, and about an 85 using Pfizer or Moderna, and there's an 85% reduction using the AstraZeneca vaccine, which isn't quite as effective. So we think that first variant that we're going to have to fight, we don't have we think the vaccines are going to control it. And that means my numbers are off. As you know, I try to predict every kind of in 3-month intervals how many people are going to pass away from COVID. And I was predicting that the B117 virus might escape the vaccine. And if they did, there would be 50,000 extra deaths. I now have to take those away because I was wrong, and we're going to be at about 550,000 deaths, sadly, at the end of April. Now we have found some new variants from South Africa, as you know, and also from South America that are starting to escape slightly the vaccine. And if those mutations start to stack on top of each other, slowly but surely, they're going to escape more and more and more of the antibody circulation of the vaccine. We're not sure about long-term T cell immunity, and that's a big factor. A lot of epidemiologists are saying, well, on the one hand, the antibody slippage you got, but we think that in the long term, we're going to have a cellular immunity level that's going to cause continued suppression of even these variants. So there's some argumentation right now in the epidemiological community, but right now we have to watch this very carefully. And as I said, everyone who is manufacturing a virus today is trying to get a vaccine variant. So they call a type of vaccine that's actually good against the variants. So you're going to start to see different kinds of vaccines that are going to start to attack different kinds of variants out in the marketplace, probably in September. So here's what you have to monitor. And so the vaccine, the strategy rate there is going to have to, if you get a lot of mutation, a lot of escape, you're going to have to go to the flu type environment, right? Every year, you're going to have to get a new vaccine that every year is developed brand new, has different efficacy rates at each time. If you've got something that where you are actually able to control the transmission spread, then you want to have an annual vaccine plus regular boosters. And if you can just dilute, then basically you want to go to a childhood universal vaccine plus boosters. So those are the different vaccine strategies. Those are the different things you're monitoring. Notice what you're monitoring here, right? You're monitoring COVID prevalence, community vaccination levels, community spread levels, vulnerability levels, treatment medication levels, reinfection rates, neutralizing antibodies, genetic coding. We don't do that today. We're not nearly enough. Right now, our antigen testing is down 30% since Christmas. Right, we're doing 1.5 million tests. In fact, the average American has had one COVID test last year. One.
That would be me. I had one.
So. You had one. How about yourself, Matt? You have one?
I had two.
You had two. You're above average.
I was going to say one before each surgery.
So
that's why. So
that's why.
The only reason.
And I also had one. So we're sort of average. That's the average rate of testing in the United States. One, and we've killed 500,000 people. That if you think about how much other testing we do for strep throat, for pneumonia, for much, for just generally, we're way below where we need to be, right? Genetic coding, we're doing 7,500 genetic tests a day. We need to do 10 times that, 20 times, probably 20 times that in order to just get to understand what's going on at the variant level. We have no idea. We're flying completely blind here, and it's really frustrating. And the problem is that these components of efficacy we have to know a lot more about because they vary at different rates. Just because you're causing a disease pathology to reduce doesn't mean necessarily that reinfection prevention or transmission spread is reducing at the same rate. So you actually have to monitor this pretty carefully to understand overall effectiveness of the vaccine.
Well, we've also had problems with people complying with contact tracing, right? They just refusing.
Boy. You bring me to the next slide with that.
Almost as if we planned it. Yes.
Well, yeah, almost. I want to just
unrehearsed, totally unrehearsed.
Believe me, you can usually tell this show is completely unrehearsed.
So what's interesting here is that if we have too much of a gene pool, and you start to apply, and they've got lots of virus out there, right? And you start to apply a vaccine, you can start to select for a superbug pretty quickly. And that's worrisome. That's what people are worried about. On the other hand, if you're able to actually control transmission spread, you can reduce the gene pool and reduce the amount of variant. So these are the two conflicting things we've got about the vaccines we started introducing. At any rate, that's this slide. And then Matt brought up the idea of contact tracing. And it turns out that we don't know. So what happened on Friday? I got my phone. My phone was ringing off the one of my colleagues at Johns Hopkins, Marty Macari, said, "Great news, herd immunity in April." And I read this.
I heard that. I heard that this morning.
This opinion piece, and I
Yeah.
went, oh,
I think he was
what the
smoking
hell?"
something, you know.
And so I looked at all I said, how is this possible? And then I called up his boss. And it's not actually his boss, but it's in the same department, basically in the same medical school. I said, how did Marty get to this? And he said, I don't know, and then and then he goes, this other friend of mine goes on TV on Sunday and says, COVID is not going to be controlled in our lifetime. So we got two people at the same medical school, one saying April, everything's going to be great. And the other one says not in our lifetime. And what is going on, right? And the answer is we don't have enough data. And whenever you don't have enough data, you fill it in with models, and you make certain assumptions for the models, right? And I do a lot of modeling. And so basically, this is the model that we use. We look at how much susceptible population you got. Then you sort of have and then if you get fancy, you can start to worry about how much exposure you got. But you certainly want to have levels of infection and then how much it resolves, right? And those things basically say, if you have this much susceptibility and you have this much infection, you're going to have this much death or this much life left. And that's a very simple, what they call SIR model. And sometimes you throw in exposure. Now, the problem is on the susceptibility, Marty said that he thought that no one, after you get vaccinated, no one's going to be susceptible anymore. Whereas my other colleague thought, no, that's not necessarily true. We could have quite a bit of susceptibility even after one's vaccinated. We're not really sure about that. Then Marty said, and then he said, he also said that if we've measured one person who definitely has a case of COVID, that means 6.5 people we've missed. Well, most experts are saying it's more like maybe we've missed 20%. So Marty's way out there, right on the sort of level of immunity. And then the exposure, we actually don't know what the prevalence level of the virus is. It really depends a lot. If you're in Southern California living in 10%, 20% positivity rates versus the Upper Peninsula and certain areas where we've got not a very low prevalence, that makes a big difference to the kind of model you create. Then on the infection rate, we actually don't know, believe it or not, what the viral transmission rates are. We don't really know R0, what they call R0. This is really such an important number, right? We don't really know it exactly. We think it's about 2.3, but it could be 2.7, and it varies because as we put on masks, as we start to distance, it goes down because it can't find people as easily. So our behaviors influence R0. We don't know what the attacks rates are. We're trying to find that out, and we don't know about super spreader events very well. And those are the things that really define whether you're going to get infected or not. Then we don't really know what the fatality rates are. We know how many people are dying, but we don't know how many people were infected because we're not testing enough. So we don't understand what they call the IFR.
And there's so many asymptomatic people. If you're not testing enough, right, you're not going to find them all.
Yeah, so we know the numerator pretty well. That person died of COVID, that person didn't die of it, but we have no idea what the denominator is. It could be 40%. It could be 30 times more than that. And then we don't really know the disease course yet because we haven't studied this long enough. And so what happened is, basically, Marty said, susceptible people, vaccinated, everything's going to be fine. We know the infection rates are going to go down to nothing, and we know the resolution is going to be great because we're a great medical school. And we're going to cure everything. Whereas my other colleague was saying, we have no idea what any of the other factors are, and furthermore, we have lots of people with long haul effects, and people haven't really thought through these variants very effectively. So that's why you get so much. That's why there's so much sort of up in the air. And part of it is we're trying to control too much, right? We're trying to say for the whole United States, it's going to look like this. And the truth is it's going to go community by community because herd immunity really matters. And that's how we get into this bubble question, right? Can we take a look and control our bubble? So it doesn't really matter what the rest of the world is doing. As long as you know these factors in your bubble, then maybe we can get a sense of what the real number is for us personally. We can't figure it out for the United States. It's just too many variables. Eventually, we probably will get, if we start doing, If we really understand our vaccination levels, we really do our serology testing and monitor that pretty carefully. We regularly do surveillance testing and then also do daily personal testing and contact tracing, which is what your point was, Matt, and infection rate. We can't figure out if you get the disease, whether, the next person does it. There are countries that do that very well. And so we think we have a little bit of a knowledge about what's going on, for example, in Taiwan and Korea. We have no idea what it is in the United States. Again, we don't do any antigen testing about the fatality rates, so we don't know the denominator. And so those are the things that we're missing. Now, if we start to test more and have more infrastructure in place, we'll be able to know that and be able to really control this virus. You'll be able to actually say what your level of risk is at any given time. But today we can't, so let's try to reduce that to our own bubble. Before I do that, I wanted to show you a couple of things. Oh, geez, we may not get to the bubble today.
I was going to say we're at about 5 minutes left here, Fred.
Well, actually, Dave said we can have an extra 10 minutes because we have Fred on, and
okay. So we got 15.
Maybe we can get through. I don't know.
We might be able to. Yes, we could go to 3:10. So.
Oh my goodness! So I wanted to show you this. So the first big thing is, for goodness sakes, if we're not sure about transmission rates for the vaccine, we sure know a lot about transmission rates with a mask. And so here is what things look like, right? If you've got a cotton mask, and I've shown you this before, right? If you're with someone who has the disease and you're with them for more than 15 minutes and they're closer than 6 feet away, you are at risk. How big a risk? There's a possibility of transmission attack rate is about 70% with a regular cotton mask. If your N95 mask goes way down, 0.1%, because an N95 mask is that much better. Possibility of transmission in the other direction, if that sick person's wearing a mask and you are well and not wearing a mask, suddenly goes down to 5%. Overall, that means the average efficacy of a mask is about 40%, right? 75 divided by 2. And then we've got the transmission of both of you guys wearing a mask, very low, 1.5%. Both of you wearing an N95 mask, very, very low. So the question is, how? So then we started looking more closely at these masks. So we don't have enough PPE in the United States right now. We're severely constrained. We probably need about 70 times more PPE than we actually have. And the answer is that there are some things you can do. And you can see that they recommend either double masking. This is recent CDC work, or knotted and tucked. If you can see that basically if you knot and tuck, and I'll show you that in a second, you move from about a 42% level of efficacy to a 65% level of efficacy. So because this is so important, I wanted to show you quickly how you do that. You fold your mask in half, okay? And then you tie as close as you can your loop, right? Like that. So you tie it up and you pull it close to as close to the mask as you can, right? Can you see me okay? There it is. Now I've got that knot. So now let's put this on, right? Here is, always wash your hands before you put on your mask. Here is the knotted side. And what you do is you push that in and you tuck this back in, right? Here's the onside. So here's that side, right? And if you tuck it in properly, which I haven't done, tuck it in properly. See, I didn't tuck it in properly. Hold everything. There we are. Now I've tucked it in. You see how tight that is against my face, how much tighter that is? Here's that side. It's all coming out that. See how I can inhale and it comes in? So you do it on both sides, obviously, not just one. I just want to show you the difference. Here you have a lot of gap. Here, no gap. Can't get my finger in. That's the difference. That's 64% effective. That's 45% effective.
Now I know N95 masks are hard to come by. What do you think of the KN95 masks, which seem to be everywhere? You can get those all over.
Chinese knockoff, yes.
Yeah, Chinese knockoff. As long as they're NIOSH approved or they're Chinese approved, they're very good. Don't get a fake one. The fake ones are up on the CDC website. I'll go under masks and look under fake, and you can see exactly which numbers are that are fake. The NIOSH approved masks will say NIOSH approved. It'll say FDA approved. Each of them will have a number, a registration number. That number will be stamped not just here, but it'll be also on the loops. this is not N95 because any N95s only go behind the ear are not true N95 masks. They actually they should go behind your neck, here and here, behind your head, behind your neck. So that's an instant red flag. Ear loops, not a real N95 mask. But a KN95 mask, if it's a true Chinese mask, actually goes through slightly more rigorous procedures than we do in the United States. They only have an 8% leakage out the sides. The United States has 11 to 12% leakage out the side. So if they're truly NIOSH approved, truly KN95, absolutely. Go for it. That's most important is that this is just is woven fabric, and your woven fabrics tend to allow the molecules to travel through pretty easily. If you can get triple protection, that's better. If you are double masking, that's even better. And if you can use a surgical mask, that stops the molecule static electricity. So imagine you take your socks out of the dryer, and you know how they stick together with stuff. That's how surgical masks stop. You need to have something go over your surgical mask because they're a little bit loose, too loose for you every day. And the 95 mask works with intercalations. It's actually a pressed fabric, not a woven fabric, that actually causes the molecules to have to go through so many little channels that it stops the molecule. And
I've seen the Biden administration folks wearing double masks. So they have a white mask underneath, and then they typically have a black mask over that.
Well, you can see you're talking about, with a single mask, no mask, double mask, you can get a sense of that, of just how much more effective. You're talking about the cumulative exposure. What they're finding is that it's not just about, and here's the double mask, you can see that on B, that's the double mask effect. Mm-hmm. And you can see that is, it's much more than just it's much more effective than just a single, what you'd think. It's not just twice as effective, it's actually about 8 times more effective in overall cumulative exposure. And that's what it turns out. It turns out that what is important and why your bubble is going to be important is because cumulative exposure gets to be important. Now, the other big way we have to control this, to control your bubble is, and how much exposure you're getting is through testing. And this is basically the strategy that people are starting to use for testing. They're starting to worry about the kind of exposure you're coming to. So if you're going through borders a lot and you're traveling an awful lot, you're going to have to, especially over long distances from community to community that aren't necessarily linked together except by you. You're going to have to really get an awful lot of screening. You'll have to have that screening in advance, and then upon arrival, and then after you're there twice. So basically 4 levels of screening, 4 days before you leave, at the airport, a day, 4 days after you arrive, and then again 5 or 10 days after you arrive. And the most strict communities, which will be Taiwan, and the northern Asian countries, as well as parts of Europe. If you, on the other hand, don't travel that much, but are in semi-closed communities, these are like your workplaces, right? Where you're with people who are, in your community generally, or in schools, and you're coming together regularly. You want to actually, instead of getting a test before, during, and after, you want to have tests every day. It turns out you don't have to do tests every day. The models indicate that you have to do tests every 3 days, excuse me. If you do tests every 3 days, your level of risk is pretty low. Once you go to a week and you see people regularly and you're in a place of over 1,000 workers, for example, you've got a great chance of really creating a spread. If you get over 5,000 people and you're going to 2 weeks, it's almost the same as not testing at all. So, those models are really starting to come together now. We're starting to see really have to test pretty regularly. If you're constantly going to a workplace, you'll want to have testing pretty regularly. And finally, there's the random piece, right? And here, it's sort of, I want to go to the football game. What do I do if I want to go to the football game? Those are the big
that seems to keep
we all want to, or dying to go watch, right? Or I want to go to the bar. And in this case, you want to combat the super spreader chance, right? And so here, you really want to do pre-testing. So before you go to the event, you want to test yourself, make sure that you're good, show them your green pass. Hey, I'm tested, or hey, I'm vaccinated, and then you can go in. So those are the things that you can start to do and what people are starting to worry about. And then you want to think about your levels of control, your PPE, and your mixing. And there are different activity. And so here's what the football groups, the NFL teams found out. They found out that cumulative impact of COVID was a big factor. They found out that 6 feet often wasn't enough distance, and they found out that 15 minutes often was way too long a period of time because they would get enough stuff in you. The first interaction of 6 feet in 15 minutes. Then they go and talk to the coach. Another 15 minutes and 6 feet. Then they go talk to their friends. Then they go shower, and they'd have 5 exposures of 6 feet and 15 minutes plus. And they found out it doesn't work because those six exposures in the course of less than maybe 5 or 6 hours were enough to get them over the threshold and give them COVID. And so what the football teams did is they decided to do something else. They decided to look at 4 factors. They said distance matters, 6 feet, time matters, 15 minutes, mask use matters. If one person wasn't wearing a mask, another person was, and then the ventilation and airflow. If you were in a really closed up space, and they would look and they'd ask the players to say, were all these factors in line, or was one of them missing? So was one of them one time you saw someone without a mask, or was one of the time you didn't have enough ventilation? It turns out that as soon as any two of these factors were broken, they immediately isolated the players. So if you're seeing someone for more than 6 feet and more than 15 minutes twice, or you didn't have mask use and you had an unventilated area once, that was enough to put you over, and they would isolate you. And all of a sudden, they stopped all the spread. So that's the sort of thing you want to think about when you're creating your own bubble, right? Here are the distance, here are the factors. Think about whether you're violating any of those factors. If any 2 are broken, then your bubble is going to pop. Now, the other thing you want to worry about, and football players only worried about practice, but it turns out that there are other levels of risk you got to think about. So if you're going to a bar regularly and you still have 3 of the 4 factors, man, you are really super high risk versus, just going to the mall or getting to the restaurant or pumping gas or, so you kind of have to, because football players are doing just one thing, working out and playing football, they were able to say, this is what I'm doing. But for your bubble, you're going to have to think a little bit about how much risk you're doing with all these different activities and really limit those activities and understand it and kind of modify what your behavior is based on what you're doing as well as your susceptibility based on the football factors. So with that, we're going to start to, right now you can sort of just think about it in your own mind, but eventually we're going to get better understanding of this. So we'll probably be able to track some of this for you and with your phone and with your smartphone over time. If COVID becomes something we have to worry about for an awful long time, we'll definitely get to this. If we're able to, if Marty's right and we're able to get to herd immunity by April, which I'm not sure. I think he's a little over optimistic.
Yeah, I think that's a little optimistic. Yeah.
Then we won't have to worry about this. But my sense is we're going to have to worry at least about some of this. And so you're going to have to sort of wonder about who's in my bubble, who am I seeing regularly, what clubs, what are their habits? Habits, right? Who gets into it, and you can see there are different kind of levels of risk, right? Where some bubbles have a whole outbreak and you got to isolate the whole bubble, and that's not good. You don't want to visit that bubble. And then of course you got that one guy who was part of both bubbles, and he popped the other bubble because now you have to isolate the other bubble, right? Because you said, oh my gosh, my friend June, who I go bingo playing with, also is at the bar, so that now pop the bar bubble, and that then hits a question mark about your immediate circle of friends. But you can all get tested. You could all have a vaccine. So you can all have different levels of bubble protection, and you can start to manage your bubbles based on that level of protection.
Now, Dave's bubble is that whiskey in the jar in Hamtramck. So
I mean, you're not inaccurate.
Okay, well, I was, he's not a bubble burster though. So
no, it's about the same 4 people there all the time.
And
okay.
And you can see some of the times you have to worry about whether you got a super spreader in your bubble, and soon we'll be able to kind of detect that. You'll have to worry about in your bubble whether someone's who's super sensitive, super vulnerable, whether they have a high level of risk, or they are immunosuppressed because they have cancer chemotherapy. You have to manage that bubble a little bit more carefully. You'll have to kind of think about how often you get tested, and whether you have testing that's pretty regular. And some people are tested all the time, like the healthcare workers, and I'm pretty comfortable in those bubbles. But when I move to, other events where everyone isn't tested, then I worry quite a bit. And then you have to kind of think about the football factors within each of those bubbles. How long was I there? Were people masking up? Was there distance when we were together? And was the ventilation good? So especially if you're working, I only tend to meet people outside. I always wear a mask when I meet people, and I'm always more than 6 feet away. Sometimes I violate the time. And that you got to kind of watch that periodically. So that's that.
We're going to have to leave it at that bubble
I've just got
point.
one more
Okay, one more point. Go ahead.
And then slowly, what you do is you start to add up all the bubbles, and you'll be able to start to manage this at a more national level. And that's what the UK is already at. They already realized. Now they're doing this. They're doing this after the fact. So they figured out that, remember, they had this little bubble in China, and the UK said, "Oh, we've got this Chinese problem, so we're going to stop all the Chinese from coming into the country." Meanwhile, what was really happening is they stopped the Chinese bubble. They stopped the Wuhan variant completely. What they didn't realize is that they had a lot of their people go to Venice. And you can see that little blue thing. And that Italian piece was actually what they should have stopped. They didn't know, right? And so they should have stopped.
Oh yeah, Northern Italy had it really bad at the beginning, right?
That's just it, right? So they went to Venice. They got, as people brought it back, and then they said, we're still pretty cold up here in England. It's still too rainy. They all went to Spain, and you can see the Spanish peak coming through. And they should have actually stopped Spain, France, and Italy, not China. Well, they probably should have stopped China too, but now we start to understand the variants. We can start to say, we're worried about people who are traveling back and forth to Spain. And you can see this is the B117 virus. They actually were able to tell Spain, Italy, the UAE, all these different flight connections in advance. Hey, we've got a bad variant. People were on your plane. People who had the variant have been, tested now, and they were on your plane. They were in your country. They were there for a while. And then Spain can start to say, let's start to monitor that, so you can get ahead of the virus. That's the idea.
Okay.
Well, slowly but surely, we're going to expand the bubbles. That makes sense?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So we went through a lot today. Was that helpful, or?
Oh no, it was good. I was trying to understand the bubble thing, So
that's how we work our bubbles. We start small, manage your own bubble, figure out what your risk levels are, and then slowly we'll expand them up, and we'll start to aggregate them.
All right, we'll leave it with that for our audience. Remember, folks, manage your bubble.
Manage your bubble. That's it. If it's a tiny bubble in the wine, then you're all set, right?
Yes. So. That one.
That's right.
Well,
you start with tiny
long
bubbles.
term, but not short term. All right. Well, thanks very much, Fred Brown, for appearing on the show today. I want to thank Fred and all of our guests today, David Weaver from the Angels. And we kicked off the show with Sabrina Collins from my employer, Lawrence Tech, talking about the various activities and the summer camps coming up this summer at Lawrence Tech. We'll be back again next Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern time with another edition of the M2Techcast. For right now, it's Matt Roush
and Mike Brennan. And
you've been watching the M2Techcast at mitechnews.tv.
Thanks, Fred.
All right.